I'm going to start off with, what is empathy?
Empathy is a lot of things. It's you imagining being them in their shoes, not as you, but as them. There's more to everything around us, so much more. Suddenly things are more colorful, they're more intense, they're more interesting, they're more intriguing, and it's like, wow, what a universe we live in.
How do you think music works with empathy? Everyone has their own way, but I feel like music just hits different.
Music is universal. There's lots of animals that use music. Someone makes a sound, somebody else hears that sound, it hits their mind, it hits their heart, it hits their soul. Wow, we can use this to communicate something to somebody else.
Welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Malina, and I'm 15 years old. Today's guest is a psychiatrist, author, musician, and the founder of the Empathy Clinic. He spent over 30 years helping people heal by using the power of empathy, not just in therapy, but in everyday life. He's written books, composed music, and taught people around the world how empathy can change everything. I'm super excited for this conversation. Please welcome Dr. Ashok Bhattacharya. Welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Malina?
I'm doing amazing. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. Before we start, I want to let our viewers know that there will be a very fun Would You Rather session at the end, so make sure to stay tuned.
Let's go.
So we're going to dig right in today. I'm going to start off with, what is empathy?
Empathy is a lot of things, but I want to really simplify the two aspects of empathy that I think about. That's empathy for emotions and empathy for thoughts or feelings. Now, there are other types of empathy, like directional empathy, which we can get into if we need to. But empathy at its very essence is the capacity to imagine somebody else's experience from their point of view, which is not the same as you walking in their shoes. It's you imagining being them in their shoes, not as you, but as them. And when we think about that, that's hard because we often understand something by relating to somebody else's experience. So if someone tells us something, we think, did I have something like that in my life? And then relating that way, that's sympathy. Sympathy is relating from a shared experience that is simpatico or similar. Empathy is particularly useful when you're relating to something that you don't have any sense of whatsoever, especially if the experience the person's gone through. And this happened to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin when they came back from the moon in 1969. They couldn't share their feelings with anyone because they've been to the moon and nobody else has. It was hard to empathize with someone who's had an experience that different.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I thought of it as, based on what schools taught us and almost everyone is, it's to put yourself in other people's shoes and try to feel what they're feeling. But how exactly would you feel, I guess, what another person is feeling?
Well, the simplest way is to ask them that question. If you say, how you doing? And someone says, oh, it's okay. Wait a minute. I sense there's something more to that story. And they start telling you it. Then they might say, oh, I lost my sock. And you say, oh, is it in the dryer? No, it's not that kind of a sock. Oh, tell me more about that sock. Well, my great-grandmother knitted that sock for my great-grandfather in World War I. And when he came back, she gave her that sock because he survived the war. It was to prevent trench foot. And many women knitted socks like that for their partners or for usually men in that World War. And that sock has been passed through the generations for years, and I just lost one of them. So that sock's going to have a bigger story of emotional impact than you lost one of your socks that just got stuck in the dryer or something. So that's digging deeper to find out that person's experience. What's the meaning of that story? What are the emotions about that story? Why is that narrative special to them? You see the difference?
Yeah. Okay, so basically you guys, I guess, you ask questions to help you understand their point by going through their journey of the feelings that they're going through, I guess?
That's part of it, but the main point or main part of it is listening super closely. And the problem with listening to somebody is that when we're listening to somebody, we also have our own chatter going in our head. Oh, I could ask this, I could think that, I'm thinking about this, now what about that? Calm that all down, relax, take notes if you have to, and just let their information seep into your mind and your heart, your soul if you need to. That's really hard to do. But someone can tell if they're really being listened to than if you're talking to them and they're kind of looking around the room, looking at their watch on their phone and say, Yeah, I've got about 34% of their attention right now, so I'm not going to tell them the whole story. I'll just tell them 34% of it.
And how do you think people can, I guess, listen attentively, especially with all the distractions that we do have in this day and age? What do you think is the best way someone can listen to, whether it's their friends, their siblings, or colleagues?
There's a technique called active listening, and it's difficult and it takes a while. But when I'm working with couples, for example, especially if they have communication problems, I'm a therapist, so I sometimes see couples. I'll say, I want you to tell your partner something, and they're going to repeat back word for word what you just told them. So just use little tiny sentences like, I went to the zoo. You went to the zoo. I saw a monkey. You saw a monkey. The monkey peeled a banana. So you listen as if you have to repeat what the person's saying. Are you ever in conversation with someone that says, "What was I saying?" and you don't know because you weren't listening that closely, and you're saying, "Oh, you were talking about yeah, oh yeah, right," because they weren't really listening to what they were saying either. I
Mhm.
pretend that they're going to stop the conversation and say, "What was I just saying?" And if I don't know, that means I wasn't listening. And so to have that pretense of I need to repeat what they're going to say if they suddenly that requires active listening. See the difference?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Wow, that's so cool. I never thought about how you would have to, I guess, it's a good way, I guess, to help with the listening is to think about if they stop anytime they ask you. It's like fresh in your mind and it shows them that you care, that you're listening. That's very cool.
Melina, the fact you picked up on that, it shows that you care because someone wants to open up to somebody and the person showing that they don't care that much about what they're saying, they won't open up as openly than if the person's really leaning in, listening well, reflecting back what that person's saying accurately, and the person will tell you more and more and more, and that flower will show all its petals.
Wow, that's very cool. And what about empathy in just in general? Let's just say I've seen many videos on YouTube where there's a person that lives on the streets and they have like a dog as their companion. And people come in, they take the dog, but they call it as like a form of empathy because they're bringing the dog to like another, like a shelter or a home or somewhere to live. But they're not doing anything to the person who lost everything, and let alone now the dog is taken. How does like empathy, do you think people should be more empathetic of the person than the dog, considering the fact that animals can still live in the wild?
Well, first of all, let's sort out a couple of definitions. Empathy is looking at a story and taking a photograph of it. Compassion is looking at that photograph and deciding what you're going to do about it. And kindness is doing what you're going to do about it. So if someone is being compassionate or thinking they're being compassionate, they may not be being empathic. So empathy gets as clear as a story as possible to not just understand, but to appreciate the person's situation. So what might be better is to offer that dog some dog food and give that person some food or some stamps to get some food. So they're both going to make it through the night with a full tummy or offer some shelter. But to take the dog away is now jeopardizing the safety of that person who has that dog. So compassion is what you do about your empathic information that you have. And sometimes, and I call this combine harvesters in Ethiopia, sometimes a first world solution doesn't help a third world solution. So when people went to Ethiopia, they said they don't have food, so let's give them combine harvesters so they can have wheat. Well, they don't need combine harvesters. They need water and agriculture and hydration and that kind of stuff. So if you go to the desert in Ethiopia, you see all these parked combine harvesters doing nothing, getting rusty because that solution didn't fit what they needed. It was compassionate, thank you very much, but the empathy was wrong. The photograph they took of the problem doesn't fit the solution they provided. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's what's important, to talk to them and understand what they need to help them get.
Exactly. What are their pain points? What are their needs? How are they suffering? How would they like to get better? How would they like to get from okay to better to excellence? And can we be part of that story that helps them get up there? Or are we going to say, I think they need more of this or that, throw it at them and hope you did a good job?
Interesting. And then why did you get into the field of empathy?
I got interested in the field of empathy when I was a young child. And I started thinking about, I've always been really curious, how do other people think and feel? It couldn't be the way I think and feel. It must be different. Must be really different. And if it's, I was a young boy in England growing up, for example, I was always really curious how girls thought, because I'm a guy. How do girls think? Then I got curious how dogs and cats thought, and fish, and trees, and everything. How do they experience themselves? What's it like for a fly to be buzzing around me and it's seeing this great big slow moving thing, kind of trying to waft it away or open the door so to leave the house? And I'm thinking, what is it see? How is it seeing? They see ultraviolet light. What is that like to be able to see nature that way? So it never stopped. What is it like? Not what am I seeing, but what is it like to be the perspective of something or someone else?
Wow. That's very deep. Like I have no words to express how incredible it must be to just now that I'm thinking about it, it's like how do they think now that I think about it?
Kind of
It's
crazy.
very interesting.
I think about sperm whales, for example. So sperm whales have a frontal cortex 6 times the size of ours. 6 times, which means they've got thinking cortex. They're sorting out problems. 6 times the real estate of our brains.
Wow.
Sperm whales. And so they invented the internet. They talk underwater over oceans, right? So they send
Yeah.
information back and forth. They also map out the ocean floor with their memories in the
Oh,
dark
interesting.
with sonar. So you think, no wonder those guys need a big brain. The question is, can they pass that on through sonar to their young, so the young don't have to go and look at the same map and make the same GPS systems that they have? But I mean, there's fascinating things about other creatures that we're learning that think, well, they have all kinds of interesting aspects to what they do and how they are, and they don't hurt each other. They just swim around with each other.
Wow, that's interesting. Now I'm thinking about octopus because they're like supposed to be super smart. They're able to even crows as well. Apparently, crows have really good photogenic memory. I think where if someone harms them, then they remember it, and then for generations, they like their generations ahead can remember them as well, which is very very interesting how that works.
Well, I think we take it for granted that other creatures couldn't possibly think and feel like we do. And I think that's probably very typically egocentric human, because I think creatures, if we evolved from creatures, they have all the sensibilities of feelings and thoughts and that we have. All we did was we stood upright so that we can have helpless children, so we can hold them. And we invented speech about 50,000 years ago, so we can communicate with words. But who said that other creatures don't have their own speech? And they communicate things. If you ever watch a ball of birds fly around and see that huge ball of 3,000 birds flying in a big blob, no one's yelling, "We're going left next." And they don't bump into each other. They bump into our buildings and our windows in tall buildings, but they don't bump into each other. They're able to communicate that in real time, instantly to each other. That's just directional empathy. But human beings are terrible at directional empathy unless you put on music and show them how to do a dance. Then they don't bump into each other as much. But see, so it's just fascinating that the empathy really is everywhere in nature before we came along. We didn't invent empathy. We just kind of started thinking about it.
Wow, that is so fascinating. It reminds me of a video I watched I don't remember. I think a couple of years ago where it was showing how different animals they can feel different things just like how humans do. Like when we mourn loss, we have our ways of dealing with it and so do other animals. I've seen how gorillas deal with it, how birds deal with it, what they do and it's fascinating how we think that just because we're able to speak and communicate in a language like this that other animals don't do it the same way, but it's crazy to know how they can probably do it on a better and deeper level than we can.
Well, let's look at epilepsy dogs. There's dogs that people have that will sense they're going to have an epileptic seizure, so they can lie down and be in a safe place or pull their car over. The dog knows. So clearly, dogs are able to pick up things that human beings can't, and respond to it. Dogs can tell when their owner is pregnant way before their owner will even know they're pregnant. A dog will
Really?
go, yes, 100% yes. And so
Wow.
so animals are very sensitive to us. They have these senses and these capacities. Birds know when there's going to be lightning in the sky. If I'm out on my bike and it's raining, I look up and if I see birds, no problem. If I see no birds, they've hightailed it out of there. They know.
Wow. I knew that like dogs are able to tell that there's like a storm coming from I don't know how many miles away, but I didn't
Yeah.
know that it was wow, that's incredible.
Well, not really, right? They have those senses. We've evolved from these creatures at some level, if you believe in evolution, that is. But we have all those senses too, but they're kind of buried under the way we live.
Do you think we'd be able to unlock those senses if we get to a deeper level where we're able to connect with ourselves?
We all can unlock those senses. All of us can do that. They're not that far away. They're not that far away. And I think when we begin to open them up, and like that flower I talked about in the beginning, we start to open them up, there's more to everything around us. So much more. Suddenly things are more colorful, they're more intense, they're more interesting, they're more intriguing. You've got more questions about everything. And it's like, wow, what a universe we live in. And I get to see a little tiny one grain of sand in the desert of this universe.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. Wow. It's so cool that we are so close to I guess unlocking that if we spend the time to. Do you know how we can do that? Or if there's like things that you can do to help get to that level?
Well, human beings used to think the world was flat. And still flat earthers on the world right now. And I think curiosity and intentional discovery and creativity and artistry and, and music, of course, these are the things that expand our empathic capacities. So if I'm listening to music, I always say like there must be more to this song. So I listen to it differently, or I listen to it with headphones instead of. And there's always more there. And I've been listening to that song for 40 years, and now I'm hearing something new in that song. Is it got to do with better speaker quality, high def, mastering, and all the things that happen? Yeah, but it was in that song when it was originally recorded. So I think about that. Well, let's say everything is like that. If I'm looking at
Mhm.
the simplest thing and I say, well, there must be more to this. And then I start seeing more to it. I'm thinking, wow, that must be everywhere. So I think we absolutely have these capacities, and it's about realizing that those capacities are there. And so when Chris Columbus back in 1492 got in the ocean and said, I'm not stopping until I fall off this flat earth, and didn't, then we realized, okay, wait a minute, let's back up. We're not flat. And so discovery is the essence of that empathy quest to find out more.
Wow, that's incredible. And oh, I love when you were talking about the little things. When you look past it, you can find so much, even with music. One example is an ant. In like, if you look at an ant and you just watch it, it's a form of meditation that I've seen people use. Is just watching it so that you let go of everything else and you just focus on the ant moving, picking up what it wants. You realize how hardworking they are, how much work they do, like what they do. It's just incredible. And with the music, I completely agree. I've seen things where people, when they listen to a song on a day that they're happy, but it's like a sad song and they just want to listen to it, they don't listen to the meaning and they just blindlessly sing the song. But the day you're sad or you're feeling down and you listen to it, you connect with the music on a deeper level because of the lyrics and because of the tone or the, I guess, mindset that you're in that allows you to understand things on a deeper level and the curiosity. It's incredible. How do you think music works with empathy?
Well, I want to talk about ants for a second before we talk about music. And I've spent a lot of time watching ants because ants are an extremely successful social creature. And if you see ants walking you see a black line on the ground, and you realize that this is 1,000 ants all walking in unison towards a certain direction, or carrying little leaves and things back to their colony. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for another ant. And if I have video of this, of ants coming up together and their antenna do this together. Are they just cleaning their antenna, or are they exchanging information? I don't know. But it's fascinating to see how social they are. I think music was our first language. Human beings didn't invent words and sentences until much later in their history. But we could sing, we could make melody, we could utter things, we could shout, and we could turn that shout into a vowel, and that we could turn it into a song, and then we can make it melodic. So music is universal. And so not just with human beings. No. Whales sing, birds sing, cicadas make a pile of noise up in trees. There's lots of animals that use music, and probably music that we can't hear, because dogs can hear in a higher up than we can't hear. Other animals can see colors we can't see. So there might be a whole bunch of sound super and subsonic that we don't even know is going on. That's happening all the time. We just hear that within the spectrum of our human hearing, and that's likely music that's happening. So I think
Wow.
that music was the first empathic connection that we had with each other. When someone makes a sound, someone else hears that sound, it hits their mind, it hits their heart, it hits their soul. Wow, we can use this to communicate something to somebody else. So I bet you the first love songs that we had were some guy humming to a girl, and she's looking up at him thinking, wow. But I think music for me has always been the one of the easiest ways to communicate non-verbally with people. Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. I've written poems and I love writing poems, but not the same way as I do when I create music, whether it's on my piano or my guitar. It just has a different vibe to it that allows me to express freely. Like some people enjoy art. I know some people like sculpturing. Everyone has their own way, but I feel like music just hits different.
Well, it hits different for a few reasons, but one of the reasons is that we have two hemispheres, and music kind of hangs around in the right hemisphere, and poems and words kind of hang out in the left. And then when we bring them together, we really are connecting our brain. So there's way more energy if you got two hands working on something. If you just had one, right? Got two now. Now you've got both hemispheres of your mind working full time, producing electricity, going to your heart, emanating that electricity to our aura. And so somebody else hears that maybe right now or later on, and they're feeling it. They're not just hearing it, they're feeling the music. And that's empathy right there.
Yeah. And then music with therapy, how does that work? I know I've seen things where um people who go through, I guess, memory loss, giving them music sometimes allows them to remember bits and pieces of their life. And even plants, they say that having music next to a plant allows it to grow better than not to.
Well, that's very true. So if someone has a stroke and their speech center on the left side of their brain was affected and they're aphasic, which means they don't have any words anymore, if you play the same words musically, then they get their words back musically, and that cross pollinates and repopulates their left hemisphere again. They get their words back. Isn't that cool? So they use
That is
music
very
to
cool.
rehabilitate stroke victims who've lost their speech, and it works.
And imagine how much more we could do with music then, and how many, I guess, people it could help. I know it helps. I think it does help a lot of people on a daily basis when they listen to music when they're sad or when they're happy because it helps lift up that mood a bit. It's just incredible to see how it works.
Well, the essence of music is a sense of belonging. So when you're putting on music, you know that people made that music, people are playing that music, they're performing that music, they're singing that music. And for that moment, you are with them. And if you ever go to a concert, people are moving in the same way. They're directionally empathic with the music. They're nodding, or there's a connection now. So it creates that sense of belonging. And
Yeah,
human beings.
concerts are incredible, especially when I went to my first concert. It was with this Punjabi singer. I don't know if you know him. His name's Diljit Dosanjh. He came here in Toronto, and it was incredible because one, my parents saw some people that they haven't met in years, so we were all able to, I guess, catch up. And two, we had some strangers dancing with us. We're like all dancing, jumping, screaming, and it was like the best feeling in the world having everyone there talking with each other and singing songs.
I think that's so true. If you go to a party and there's no music and people are kind of standing around, you put music on, they're relaxing, they're moving. So it's social lubricant. It's not just one on one, it gets groups of people acting more unified and it brings them together. So I think music is the great empathizer.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite genre of music?
Not really. There's certain music I don't listen to, but I think almost any music, I think if it's performed properly and if it's in tune, I'm very sensitive to pitch, and so if something's a little out, my back teeth start to grind like chalk, and I can't listen to it. But if it's played tunefully, being a musician myself, it helps me to appreciate all kinds of music and how it comes about. But I think music by itself is so powerful. But if I'm listening to my own music, it's mostly rock or jazz or fusion or funk, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. That's very cool. I understand completely when it comes to if there's something out of tune. I've had songs where someone says something and I feel like it just doesn't match the place that's supposed to be at, and it could have been earlier or later because like that one part just doesn't match or the beat doesn't stay enough, and then I'm just like, I don't think I want to listen to this anymore.
Yeah, so we're sensitive to it. I think human beings are very sensitive to that because we are sensitive creatures, especially if our emotions and our thoughts are not lining up properly. And there's a little mismatch or constructive interference with that, that can make us feel a little disconnected. And we want to feel connection as much as possible.
Yeah. That's I completely agree. Now, I want to, I guess, switch gears a little bit, and we're going to get into a more fun segment. We'll start off with the mystery question and then would you rather questions. So, the mystery question is, if you could teach one thing to the next generation, what would it be and why?
Oh, this is too easy. Empathy.
Yep, I was kind of expecting that answer.
Empathy is teachable. People think it isn't. And I've put videos up on how it is and why it is. And I think if we can get the next generations more empathic, see, nature is essentially designed to be empathic within itself. A flower doesn't have to talk to the soil. The soil doesn't have to talk to the flower. The flower doesn't, or the plant doesn't have to talk to the vegetarian animals around it, or the meat eating. It all goes together. And I think if we can remind ourselves that we're meant to be with, as opposed to opposed and not with, then empathy will find much more unison and harmony on not just us, but on our planet as well.
Wow, that's incredible. And do you have a mystery question for the next guest?
That's going to be interesting. Yeah, what's their definition of empathy?
What's their definition of empathy? Okay, I actually can't wait to see what people would say about that. Okay, so now we're going to get into the would you rather session. Are you ready?
Let's go.
There'll be three questions. The first one is, would you rather randomly burst into opera every time someone says your name or beatbox every time you blink?
Oh, randomly burst into opera, especially
Okay.
especially if they say it properly.
Okay, would you rather have background music follow you everywhere or have a dramatic drum roll before everything you say?
Drum roll before everything I say, for sure.
Okay, and then the last one is, would you rather forget the lyrics to Happy Birthday and start singing the alphabet instead, or sing the whole song of Happy Birthday in opera while making dramatic eye contact with the cake?
Number two, for sure.
You don't want to forget the Happy Birthday song.
No, it's important. I think recognition is important for us, and birthdays are so powerful because it's an absolute of being recognized. And I think recognition is powerful. And you didn't grow up in my household, but there was always a guitar and music. And when it was someone's birthday, we made a pretty big deal about the eye contact and hamming it up and being a bit dramatic about it. So it was a lot of fun, and still is. But my kids are adults now, but they have grandchildren. I have grandchildren, so they're going to have to go through all that again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhattacharya, for being on the Young Leaders podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope our viewers took something away from this episode.
Thank you so much for having me, and all the best with your future. You're an amazing young person.
Thank you so much.